Stay clear of patient.
Okay, this is clear.
Liver shock, shock delivered. Begin CPR.
July 22nd is a day in my life that will change the rest of my life forever.
On Wednesday, July 22nd, very late in the day, I was sitting in a product development meeting when the beeper went off to notify me that a colleague was in distress.
We were in the meeting and all of a sudden we heard a big thud. And we looked out and we saw Joe lying on the floor.
When I arrived on scene, he was face up on the floor and he was unresponsive. The patient's heart had stopped.
I actually changed my routine that day. Normally I get into work, we have flexible hours, I get into work fairly late, I work late, and I usually end my day by going down to the gym and maybe heading out of the gym to go home around 8:30 at night, 8:30, 9 o'clock at night. On this particular day I had friends visiting, they were staying at my house, so I went down to the gym early that day. I went down around 3:30 in the afternoon, and around 5 o'clock I headed back to my desk. Got a cup of ice to bring back to my desk and pour some iced tea over it, have a cold drink before I left for the day. But I never made it to my desk. It was right after I grabbed that cup of ice that I went down.
Initially we ran out into the hallway and we saw a cup, some ice and some water laying around. So our initial reaction was, okay, he slipped on some ice and fell on the ground and was a head injury. And we immediately called the emergency response team.
I've been a member of the emergency response team for just a little over 20 years. And I joined basically as a volunteer to help my coworkers in case of need of emergencies. We all carry voice pagers, so when somebody dials 2222 in-house, they will page us, give us the location and the nature of the emergency.
We have an emergency response team, but we've also trained just about every employee within the cardiac care business on CPR and use of an AED. Because the only thing that will save a life when there's sudden cardiac arrest is the defibrillator that needs to be nearby and applied correctly.
We noticed that he was starting to turn blue, there was a little pulse, he was having trouble breathing and so forth. So my immediate reaction was to turn around and run for a defibrillator.
When I arrived on scene, I could tell it was a serious situation. I immediately leapt to the floor next to him and started doing chest compressions in conjunction with the rescue breathing.
As I was running down, I met a number of different colleagues and I mentioned we needed a defibrillator. Someone had just fallen. By the time I got back to Joe with the defibrillator, there must have been about 5 defibrillators there.
We were able to set it up with no problem, and it analyzed and it suggested we give one shock.
Liver shock delivered.
I met Joe in the emergency room where he was evaluated on an accelerated basis because of the risk of the heart muscle dying minute by minute while the artery's blocked. He was urgently transferred to the cardiac catheterization lab where the team had already been assembled as he had been transported by ambulance from Philips Healthcare to the hospital. Joe's procedure was done from the femoral artery, the artery in the groin. A thin tube is placed from the groin up to the heart. Dye is injected through these thin tubes and an X-ray image is taken. It happens to be that the equipment used is a Philips Healthcare cardiac catheterization imaging system. We took the pictures. We then can immediately go into an angioplasty once the artery blockage is identified. Our general goal is to treat that, stabilize the patient, and then subsequently treat other blockages that may exist at a future time. Joe had another blockage in another important artery called the left anterior descending coronary artery. Once we saw that he made a complete and beautiful recovery, we then elected to do a procedure subsequently at Mass General Hospital of the other artery blockage. The fact that he was able to be resuscitated was thanks in large part to his prompt defibrillation. So that was really the difference in this particular patient from most patients who have sudden cardiac death.
What I tell all of my friends now is you need to take care of yourself, you need to exercise, You need to get to your doctor at least once a year for your regular checkups. I had tried to do most of the right things. Maybe, because it happened to me, maybe some other people that I know will change their lifestyles a little bit, maybe help save a life that way.
Well, it is an amazing congruence of things that came together to save Joe's life. Philips Healthcare, Philips Healthcare products, Philips Healthcare employees saved a Philips Healthcare employee's life.
My wife and I took a trip up to New Hampshire, and as we walked along the dock, I spotted something. It was a case that said for emergency use only, with a glass front on it, and I walked over to it, and lo and behold, it was a Philips defibrillator. I says to my wife, I want you to take a picture of me hugging this defibrillator. I'm going to actually take that picture and hang it in my office at work and keep it there, just as a reminder that Philips has the technology that can do wonders.